One of the most iconic and unforgettable SUV designs in history has to be the P2 Volvo XC90. There's so many of them on the road because Volvo made them for so long. Even the famous Jeremy Clarkson has owned 3 of them. Let's see why they're so special. So Volvo's been making practical and family-oriented cars since the beginning. In 1966, Volvo introduced the 140 series. The 140 came in 2 different flavors, either the 144, a 4-door sedan, or 145, a 5-door station wagon. They were an instant hit in the late 60s and early 70s because of their compact exterior compared to the gargantuan, big, full-size station wagons of the late 60s and 70s. These 140 series Volvos got slight revisions over the years, which evolved into the 240 series. And the 240 was just like the 140, having the 244 and 245. The 240 went from 1974 to 1993 in the US. Just like the XC90, it was well run. We now fast forward to January of 2001 at the North American International Auto Show. Volvo introduced its adventure concept vehicle, which turned into what we know as the XC90. In 2003, Volvo introduced the production version of the XC90. They first came out with 2 different engine options, either a 2.5-liter 5-cylinder turbo, which made 208 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque, and the 2.9 T6. These are ones that if I still see them driving around today, I'm honestly surprised. It was a 2.9-liter twin turbocharged 6-cylinder engine. It made 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque with standard all-wheel drive, but it had one critical flaw. GM partnered with Volvo in the early 2000s for this one T6 in the XC90 and the S80, but this 4-speed automatic transmission had catastrophic issues. The first P2 XC90s were produced in Volvo's Torslanda plant in Sweden. In 2005, Volvo introduced the 4.4-liter V8, also known as the V8 444S. The V8 for the XC90 was produced from 2005 to 2011 and a half, like this one. In 2007, the XC90 was slightly refreshed and it was given a slightly different front and rear end, and most importantly, a new base model engine option, a 3.2-liter inline 6-cylinder, also known as the 3.2. It made 236 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque. Compared to the V8, the 3.2 can be pretty lethargic, but it still is a decent engine. The XC90 got its second to last refresh in 2011.5, which sadly retired the V8 engine, and the 3.2 was the only engine option. In 2013, the XC90 got slightly different LEDs in the front for the daytime running lights and new tail lights. So this particular XC90 is more special than others. This is a 2011 and a half XC90 V8 Executive, and it's a fully loaded executive, unlike my Thor, which is an executive light. What makes this even more special than being just a 2011 and a half XC90 V8 is that this is actually the very last XC90 V8 that was produced ever. This particular XC90 was sold in Germany through Volvo's military sales overseas program. It's been all over Europe, from the very tip top of Sweden to the very bottom of Spain. So you don't usually see too many fully loaded V8 Executive XC90s on the road. A lot of the XC90s that you'll see are either 3.2s, 2.5s, or regular V8 non-executive models. The first thing that I'd say most would notice are these bigger 19-inch Galatias. They transform the ride of the XC90 from really soft and cushy to firm and sporty. Other than the wheels, the other 2 things that you'll notice about a V8 Executive model XC90 is this chrome C-pillar and the chrome mirror caps. Inside, a few of the key features that I'd like to mention now are the heated, cooled, and massaging driver's and passenger side seats, heated rear seats, and also perforated leather throughout the whole interior of the car, which really adds to the executive feeling. Gustav has every single option that a 2011 and a half XC90 V8 Executive could have. Also, Volvo made really interesting colors at the time. For example, like on my XC90, Ember Black, and on this XC90, Electric Silver, which has some sort of hints of blue in the sunlight. So, right before we get inside of this XC90, this is the key, just like all other P2 Volvos. This yellow button turns on the parking lights if you're looking for it at night. I use that feature all the time. But this one, like I said, is an electric silver metallic. And this one, since it is the V8 Executive, has these really nice seats. These are even more luxurious than mine. This over here controls the cooled function, and this controls the massaging function. I'll talk about that later. But let's get inside because it's like 100 degrees outside. So there's a lot to go over in a fully loaded executive model XC90. I first want to mention the interior quality. My XC90's interior has held up pretty well at 170 some thousand miles, but this, nothing squeaks, nothing rattles. Of course, like other P2s, this is normal, but everything just looks really nice. The executive package also got these fancy carpet mats, which they remind me of my house. They're so soft and fluffy. But because this is a V8 Executive, you have a 3-spoke wooden steering wheel. The wood feels really nice. This is actually a different color wood than mine. You also get wood trim around the radio bezel, which mine doesn't have. The gauges are just like any other P2 Volvo, and you have a trip computer and other little information on this screen over here, which you can use with this little rotating knob. It's helpful. I use it in mine. Also with this, you have the factory navigation system, which works. I use it in mine every once in a while, but it is dated. It does show its age. It's interesting how you control it. You could either use it with a remote, a wireless remote, or these buttons on the back side of the steering wheel, which use this. This also has a backup camera when you put it into reverse. It's decent quality, if you can see that. It is decent quality, but it does take a second for the screen to pop up if you're not using the radio. The interior of the XC90 really hasn't changed from 2003 to 2014, and even the XC Classic in China. So all of them have this same general layout. The buttons over here, which on this one, since it has the full Bluetooth function for the phone, you can dial the phone number over here with this keypad. It also controls all the radio presets. It's very simple. It is a little bit dated, but it's not bad. Down here are the climate controls, which look like every other P2 Volvo. You have your individual climate over here. Pretty simple, bare bones. But down here you have a selection of buttons. This one turns on and off the rear climate control. This one turns on and off the blind spot monitor, adaptive headlights, child locks, power folding mirrors, and parking. I really do have to say I love the wood trim on this, especially because on mine the wood trim is kind of cracked. This has held up beautifully. You can also see the perforation and just how nice the leather looks on this. You can definitely feel the rise in quality even compared to my own V8 XC90. So this is definitely where a lot of your childhood memories have consisted if your parents had one of these. So also, since this is the Executive, you have that same fluffy carpet mat in the back. And there's not a lot back here. First of all, the driver's seat is in my driving position, and I can fit my feet under the seat comfortably. I have an inch or so of legroom. This second row seat does slide forwards and backwards, but these XC90s are not that huge inside. It is really nice on a hot day like this to have air vents in the back over here and a rear climate control. I'll get into where that rear climate control is, but this is actually where you have the heated seats for the 2 outboard seats. This is only available on a fully loaded Executive model. But other than that, you have little compartments like ashtray and cup holders here, which make this thing very useful, and map pockets on both sides. So this is the fun part, getting into the third row. So they didn't make this car for, you know, huge people, but I've gone into my third row once or twice, and I've used it once or twice. It's not terrible to get back here. You just kind of have to finagle yourself. I did get to sit in the third row of a 2004 Acura MDX, which this car did go against at the time, and it actually has more legroom than this. This seat is, in the middle. If you're taller, I'm 5'9". If you're taller than me, you're not really gonna fit. But I could sit back here for maybe an hour or so, but nothing longer than that. I have just a little bit of leg room and I can fit my feet under the seat. It's nothing crazy. And because this is an older SUV, the roofline isn't sloped like a coupe, so headroom is actually pretty decent too. Something else that my friend Ian just pointed out to me is that this is a handle which actually helps people get into the third row, which is part of that practicality of the XC90. One last thing that I want to mention about these fully loaded executive models is that they have a different chrome exhaust tip, which actually adds to it because mine just has a normal dual exhaust. But now into the trunk. This is where the IKEA adventures begin. So the third row is down on this. You have a reasonable amount of space with the third row up. It's usable. There's also this little compartment here, well, flap, that I use really often, and it holds grocery bags or whatever you want to put back here from sliding. And there's these two hooks back here. Something that caught my attention, besides more of this plush luxurious carpet, is this tonneau cover. I really wanted one for my XC90, and it's apparently a really rare option for these P2s. It's hard to find. So for the two people with very small legs in the third row of this XC90, you do get some storage back here, and you also get 4 cup holders, 2 on each side. So even though the second row is up, I've showed this in other videos of my own XC90. When you fold all the seats down, and the front seat, even the front passenger seat, folds flat too almost, you can shove a lot of stuff back in the XC90. Also, this 12-volt power outlet runs on the car's battery, so the car doesn't need to be on. So for people that want to go camping with one of these, you don't need the car running to charge your phone or something small back here. Excuse the dirty car, but there's a few things that I wanted to mention. First of all, these P2 XC90s have a split tailgate, just like the old BMW X5s. So it makes it really handy if you want to stand on top of it. You can just shut this like that. And then also the towing capacity for these, for people that tow campers, the 3.2 and the V8 are both rated to tow 5,000 pounds. I've heard reports from people that have the transmission cooler on their V8s, which that is another mod that you can use from a T6 XC90. But people with V8s have towed well over 5,000 pounds. So I've heard someone tow 9,000 pounds. It just depends. But, you know, the car isn't that big to tow big things, but these things can pull really well. Also, for people that are interested in having Apple CarPlay, I literally just did this. And, you know, I'm editing the video now. This is the Legend head unit. You can talk to the owner, well, the creator, well, the manufacturer on Facebook. But, oh, it's so nice. It has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. It's such an improvement over the, you know, the factory head unit. At least to me, just because I really like having Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And also it has a backup camera, and you can opt it to have a front camera too. So the XC90 had several engine options over the years. This one in particular is the V8, but there are some good and bad apples in the bunch. So this XC90 V8 has the B8 444S. It's a 4.4 liter dual overhead cam V8 engine. It makes 311 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, which is the same TF80 SC 6-speed auto as my XC90, but this, since it's a 2011 and a half, has a different transmission control module. As for other XC90s, you could get the 2.5T from 2003 to 2006. It's a 2.5 liter, 5-cylinder turbocharged engine, the same one in the XC90, which is interesting. They put such a low power engine in a big car, but it makes 208 horsepower compared to the 311 in this. You could also get a 2.9 liter twin turbocharged 6-cylinder that made 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, paired to a 4-speed automatic. Volvo also offered a 3.2-liter six-cylinder that's also found in the Land Rover LR2, which is an interesting combination, and other Volvos of the same era. It makes 236 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque. As for some of the more reliable XC90 engines, I would say the 2.5-liter, the 3.2, and the V8. Pretty much anything that's not a T6. So from my personal experience from my V8 XC90 and the owner of Gustav, the V8 in these has been extremely reliable. Despite the XC90 being a front-biased all-wheel drive crossover, these things are actually pretty off-road capable. From my personal experience, I've done quite a bit of off-roading with my own XC90, and it's really surprised me. It's kept up with places that I've taken my Tacoma. So I think we're going to be getting on the throttle just a little bit and see how this 4.4-liter V8 does. It's great. These things really do pick up once you hit like third gear. Everything, if you're wondering if the V8 is worth it, if you're looking at an XC90, yes, no doubt about it. If you're coming from a 3.2 going to a V8, do it. If you're coming from a 2.5, do it. T6, do it. Just do it! There's no doubt that the V8 is the best engine out there, I think, for the XC90. The ride is really, it feels like I'm driving a new car. It really does. Which makes me notice that the suspension on my XC90 is somewhat tired because it just glides over the road. It's so quiet, like wait. It's so quiet without an exhaust on it, but it has such a nice feeling of density and luxury, opulence, and oh, I just remembered I'm going to try the cooled seat. So you use the plus and minus button. Oh, and then the massaging function. You can adjust how high or low you want the massage to massage your back. Oh my God, it feels so oh. Let's see here. The shifts are so crisp. It really picks up and goes. This thing goes. I mean, I have the same type of fun with my XC90, but you can feel the update of the transmission in this. It's just much more eager to go.